Hello, awesome humans. Wow, welcome to the 100th episode of the Awesome Human Podcast. It's kind of surreal that this is the 100th episode, like really surreal. Um, if you weren't with me from the beginning, I'm actually going to share the story of how this whole adventure began. But this is a pretty surreal moment. That we've done this 100 times together. Wow. So welcome, whether you're here with me live or watching the recording or listening later, welcome. Really special moment to share together with you. I was setting up to do, setting up the mic and everything, and my daughter, Mia, who many of you have met, especially when I was doing these during the pandemic, and she would pop in. But I was setting things up and I said, yeah, babes, I'm doing the 100th episode. And I kind of said it quickly, because I was setting things up, and she looked at me and she was like, wow, that's amazing, mama. And so, yeah, that is amazing. And it was just a reminder, we're not fantastic at celebrating our own accomplishments, right? So I just wanted to share that because it's a pretty amazing accomplishment. So I'm thrilled to celebrate this moment with you. And here's what I want to talk about today. Two things, two themes. One is I have a pretty big announcement to share with you, and we can decide if we want the announcement first or we want it later. You can tell me if you're here live. You can tell me in chat. Because I was thinking about it. I said, I'll just ask, do we want announcement now or do we want it later? And then I want to share with you 5 really meaningful things that I've learned over the past few years about reinvention, because I've gone through a pretty significant reinvention, especially in my work over the last few years, and I'll share that. And I want to share with you these 5 really powerful lessons that I've learned. And they're connected to the big announcement. But I want to share them with you because I think that as human beings, reinvention and our ability to evolve and reinvent is very, very core to who we are. But we forget that it is our innate ability, and we start to think we're bad at change, we're bad at evolving. And so I want to talk about those lessons because I think that so many people, if you read my weekly emails, you've seen me writing about reinvention. So many people are in a moment of reinvention, change, transition. And so I want to share those lessons with you because I think they'll be valuable to many of you. So those are the 2 things. Okay, we have a pretty overwhelming, violent agreement, as I call it in chat, to share the announcement first. Okay. Here's the announcement. It is a bittersweet announcement. Okay. So be ready for that. The announcement is of 2 parts. The first part is this 100th episode of the Awesome Human Podcast will be our last. So that's the bitter part. It's going to be our last Awesome Human Podcast episodes. Of course, they'll always be there. The recordings will be there. It's on every podcasting platform, but this is going to be our last. And the sweet part, I promised you it's bittersweet, is that I am launching a brand new podcast, most likely in early September. We're already recording many episodes, but I'm launching a brand new podcast called Reinventability. And this podcast, I am thrilled to be able to share with you. And it's going to be, again, launching in early September. We're recording episodes now. I will record some of the episodes live, just like this, but many of them will be pre-recorded, and you'll be able to access them on every platform where you listen, and we'll have videos on YouTube as well. It is a podcast whose hard purpose is to inspire and encourage you to embrace change and reinvention with a mindset of possibility and purpose, to shift out of resisting change and discomfort, around change, and into truly embracing it as an opportunity to evolve and to grow. And for me, it is something that I've been experiencing for all of my life, but especially in the last 2 years. And I just want to tell you, how excited I am to share this new body of work with you. And just the first episodes that we've recorded, they're really incredible. And the podcast is going to be a mix of some episodes will be shorter, just me, and some episodes I will have, just like in this one, we'll have amazing guests and authors and thought leaders and people who have reinvented in all kinds of ways within their career, within their company, outside, as business owners, as individuals. I really cannot wait to share it with you. And so this is the big announcement. And I think all of you here probably get my weekly emails. My weekly email community will be the first to know when we launch. So please be on the lookout for that. And please, when the first episode is out, I hope you listen. The first episode is me sharing what is reinventability. I'm not going to dive into that now. What is reinventability? The power of reinvention, and sharing some of my reinvention story over the last 40 years or so. And so I hope that you will join me on that new journey. I hope that you will find it incredibly inspiring and fueling, just like you have found these podcast episodes and recordings really inspiring and fueling. And I hope that I feel that it's very timely for where we are as human beings. We live in a world that is, change is always the constant, right? But I think the pace of change has accelerated so much, and there's just so much shifting in the world, and everything like AI itself is appending the way that we work and communicate. And there's just so many shifts. I have a keynote called Thriving Through Change. And among all my keynotes, that is the keynote that I've given the most over the last 2 years. So I really wanted to create this new podcast to be of service, of greatest service to as many awesome humans as possible who are dealing with change, who are going through change. Because to be honest with you, I believe that honing your ability to reinvent into the future self that you want to be is the most essential skill that you can hone in it now and in the coming years. And that's the greater purpose of the podcast. So thank you for all your kind comments in chat. And yes, so look out for my email when the first episode launches. Please subscribe to the podcast so you make sure you get the new episodes automatically downloaded for you. And I can't wait to hear how it's resonating with you as we get going. There'll be a segment on the podcast where I answer listener questions. And so you can always share questions that you have. And in fact, if you have something that is related to change that you're frustrated by or stuck on, or have a question, you can email it to me now, and I may address it on one of the upcoming episodes that we're recording before we launch. So all you need to do is just send an email. It's Nataly@happier.com. You can just reply to one of my weekly emails, or send me an email and just put Reinventability Podcast in the title, in the subject line, and tell me what your question is, and I may answer it during one of the episodes. All right, so now that we got the big exciting announcement out of the way, and I love that someone was here. Jody, it's your first time. Thank you for joining, Jody. Yes, it is your first time, and it's the last of this journey. But again, we're beginning a new journey together. So all of you who are here with me now and watching the recording, you're officially beginning the new journey with me. And I will be recording, like I said, I'll be recording some of the episodes live just like this, and some will be pre-recorded. I want to answer a couple of questions. Is there going to be another book to go with the new podcast? So the short answer is yes. Not only would there be another book, but much more. So I have been working for the last couple of years on creating this Reinventability framework, which is a framework to help you take action to evolve into the future self you want to be. So it is a structured, guided process, just like I created a framework and a method to help you be happier with my first book, Happier Now. And I've taught the Happier method to so many companies and workshops and keynotes, just like I created a method and core skills to help you break through burnout so you can thrive more in my second book, The Awesome Human Project, and in the journal, The Awesome Human Journal. I'm doing the same with this. So I've been working on creating this framework. I'm actually incredibly excited to share it with you. It is a 7-step process, a guided process to help you gain clarity about where you want to evolve to next, to help you identify the inner constraints that you need to loosen, specifically the inner stories and beliefs that limit you, that you believe and hold on to, and how to unravel and loosen those, to identify envision all the possibilities of how you could evolve, whether it's transition in your career or outside. And then most importantly, to take momentum action, because there is no reinvention without action. Action is the magic sauce, but to figure out what is the action to take and to learn and evolve from there. And so I've been working on this framework for a while. It is based on one of the things I've realized, and this is kind of transitioning into the lessons I want to share with you, but one of the things I realized in the last couple of years is I've been kind of a black belt in reinvention. We all reinvent. Our whole life as human beings is reinvention and change and evolution. It's who we are. But perhaps because I was thrust into reinvention so early on, and many of you know my story, I came to the US as a refugee when I was 13. And it was a huge reinvention that I had to go through, that I've become quite good at it. I don't mean to brag, but I'm pretty awesome at reinventing myself, reinventing my career. In my career, I've been a venture capitalist, a consultant. I've run tech companies. I've started 3 different companies. I've become an author and a speaker and a mentor. And so I kind of mapped my process, which is innate to me, to create this reinventability framework. And then the other big input has been, so my father, so it's very special for me, this framework and this whole new body of work. My father, who I know I've mentioned because I'm so close with my parents, but my father is a physicist. He's a scientist, but for the past 25 years, he has been running a company that helps companies invent scientific inventions. So just fun example to mention is, do you know the Crest white strips to whiten teeth? So my dad and his methodology and his team were instrumental in helping Procter & Gamble invent that. So my dad and his team, they've created this process of invention, right? Because when we think about inventing, it's like, oh, a genius inventor has a brilliant idea. Well, it's not quite that. There's a process to follow. And so my dad, that's what he's been doing for the last 20 years. And so 25 years. And this has all been seeping into me, right? Because my dad, we're like each other's, closest life and business and work advisors. And so a lot of the reinventability framework that I've created is also inspired by science, and it's inspired by the scientific method of invention. And so it's very special to me that my dad and I get to collaborate on that as well. So the podcast is coming out of that, a new book that I'll start working on soon, and many more things, a new keynote on reinventability that I'm working on. And something I'm really excited to share with you is this fall, I will be offering my first ever program to teach this reinventability framework to you so that you can actually make it your own. So you can learn how to embrace change instead of resist it, to envision what's possible, to get clarity on where you want to evolve to next, to recognize those inner constraints and unravel those limiting stories, to figure out what action to take and to learn through doing it. And so I will be offering a program, the Reinventability program, to teach you so you can learn this framework for the first time this fall. So look out for an announcement on that. I'm really, 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 really excited to offer it. And it's a great fit if you are at a transition point in your life or your career and you want to gain clarity about where you want to evolve into next. It's a great fit if you are a leader and you want to learn this framework to use on your own and with your team so that your team and you can better embrace change and evolve through change and see it as an opportunity to grow. It's a really great program and framework if you are feeling dissatisfied or unfulfilled, perhaps in your work or your life, and you want to you want to create a new chapter. You want to live with more fulfillment. You want to figure out what your purpose is. So it's a great framework for you for that. And it's a really great framework if you're like at a particular inflection point, perhaps in your career, a particular pivot point, and you want to really have this structured process to help you really evolve into your highest potential. So look out for that. I cannot wait to share it with you. I'll probably, we're going to announce it probably towards the end of August, and there'll be an early bird option available. And then we're likely starting in early October. So look out for that. So yes, Reinventability is a framework and talks and programs and a podcast and a book and much more. And again, I hope you can hear it in my voice. This is something that I've been working on for a while, and I'm really excited to share with you. And now I want to tell you a couple of things. I want to tell you, first of all, just to honor this moment of this being our 100th episode of the Awesome Human podcast, and the last as we transition into the new podcast. For those of you who don't know, I want to share the story of how this began, because it's it's a really beautiful example of a reinvention, right? And what is possible, and how beautiful it is to really follow your sense of meaning and to embrace challenges with a mindset of possibility and purpose. So when the pandemic broke out, so my business is, right, I speak, I mentor, I do workshops, and it was all in person. That was my business. And then when the pandemic broke out, obviously everything shut down. And basically my business went to zero overnight. There was no more business because everything got canceled. And I'm sure that you all experienced different challenges in your life, and you can probably imagine this was very, very challenging. And I'll be honest with you, I definitely spent the first month or so just freaking out. I mean, it took me a while to build my business. And I love the work we were doing with companies and helping so many awesome humans. And so I spent the first month just kind of really freaked out and like not knowing what to do. And then I had this moment, and it was one day, I was trying to remember which day, but I can't, where I woke up and I just had this clarity of thought. And the thought was, I cannot control this. Like, this is happening. Okay, I can't control it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to think of ways that I can be of service to people who are all going through this incredibly stressful and challenging time, right? And I said this to my colleagues. I said this to my team. I said, okay, let's think of what we can do without being able to leave our houses, right? How can we be of service to people who are really struggling? Everyone was really struggling. And I was like, you know what? I have these like emotional fitness skills that I teach, and they really help people struggle less and stress less. And I think they'd be helpful. And I said, let's just do like a free Zoom, and I'll just share those skills. And so we did our first Zoom, and we had, I think, 2,500 people come. 2,500 people register, and I think about 1,500 were there live. And it was great. And we got like all this great feedback of how helpful it was. And I was like, oh, okay, great. Let's do another one next week. Let's do one on, another topic that might be helpful to people in this really stressful time. And so we just started doing these weekly hours, and the initial name was the Awesome Human Hour, right? So we called it Awesome Human Hour, and we would have hundreds, thousands of people come because everyone was stuck at home. And this was, people would call it their best self hour. It was really, really incredible. And it was so meaningful for me that I could do something to be of service, to be of help to all these people who we were all struggling. It was such a challenging time. And then when the pandemic kind of ended and we sort of all went back to our offices and work, I said to my colleagues, I said, well, this has been so great. I don't want to stop doing it. So we made it the Awesome Human Podcast. We actually started releasing it as a podcast on different podcasting platforms, and was doing that for a year. And then came a point, and some of you may remember that, where I realized I was burning out because my speaking picked back up. I was traveling a lot, and doing this every week was really burning me out. And if you were here, you'll remember that it was a really difficult choice that I had to make these monthly. And I know I shared this in one of the episodes, and I wrote about this, of how this was really challenging decision, but it was a really great way to practice what I teach. And it was a really great way to practice really honoring my being and my energy, and recognizing that by trying to do it all, I wasn't showing up as my best in any way, including on the weekly podcast. And so we took this and we made this monthly. And so we've been doing it monthly for the last year and a half or so. And so here we are. And I want to tell you that this has been one of the most gratifying experiences of my life. I've gotten to know so many people in my community because they become regulars attending these live sessions. And I've heard from hundreds of you telling me how helpful these episodes are and how much you appreciate them. But also, it really helped my business. Kind of about 6 months in, or maybe even less than that, yeah, probably less than that, we started to hear from companies where one of the people would attend one of the Awesome Human Hours and they'd be like, oh, let's bring this to our team. So I started doing virtual keynotes because I started to do this Awesome Human Hour. And I started being asked to do virtual keynotes at all kinds of companies. And my speaking team was like, oh, there's a demand for this. And we started to market it. And I gave something like 300 talks and virtual keynotes during the pandemic. But none of that would have happened. That opportunity wouldn't be open for me if I didn't first connect to my sense of purpose when everything was out of my control and seemed really broken, and ask myself like, okay, I can't control what is happening. So instead of just being in fear, instead of resisting it, instead of just, putting my head down and crying because my business disappeared, instead of that, what can I do that feels good to me, that can be in service of others? How can I use my gifts? We all have gifts. I talk to you about this a lot. How can I use my gifts in service of others? And that is where the Awesome Human Hour and the Awesome Human podcast came from. And it also really fueled the business. And so I wanted to share this with you because that is something that I hope you take away from our, these episodes, and something we'll be talking about a lot on the new Reinventability podcast is we can either resist change and challenges. We can either stay in fear and overthink about all the things that could go wrong and really be frustrated, or we can embrace it as an opportunity to grow and evolve. And without even being intentional about it, that is what I did. And I wanted to share this because, again, not only did it really fuel me and give me a sense of purpose amidst this really, really difficult time, but it really helped my business. And that is at the very core of reinvention. And that's at the very core of what I'll be exploring a lot more in the podcast and the new program, and something I really want to help you with. And so the continuation of that, and I want to get into sharing with you the 5 lessons I've learned about reinvention in the last few years. Kind of the continuation of that is that about 1.5 years ago, maybe 2 years, roughly, my business changed again. And I internally also just started to feel, I've written about this a lot. I've written a lot of emails about being in the goo, right? Last year to 2023, I was in this goo and I just felt really stuck. I didn't feel as excited about the things I was talking about. My business wasn't growing. It was really challenging, really, really, really challenging. And again, when things are challenging, the fear just pipes up. I was like, oh, do companies not want me to speak anymore? Do leaders not want me to mentor them? Is my work not good enough? Am I not saying interesting things? Am I bored of this? All this kind of fear thinking. And it took me a while to kind of acknowledge that I was stuck in it and to get to a place to say, this is part of being human. We go through these iterations, we go through these reinventions, and it's a cycle. And part of that cycle is sometimes being in this place of uncertainty and the goo. And that was for me last year. And at some point, I realized that I was being invited. I was being called to either reinvent and bring in more of the things that I was really excited to talk and teach and speak about. And I could either embrace that opportunity or I could resist it. And I embraced it, because I think that is the only way forward. And that is when I began to really think about it and started working on this new framework. And so many things have come out of it that I'm so excited to share with you, that I hope will also benefit you in a tremendous way. That is why I do the things I do, because they're in service of awesome humans like you. And so that is where the podcast came from, and the new framework and the new program. I'll also be doing, next year, I'll be offering my first ever mastermind mentorship, where it'll be a small group of people and we'll work together very closely, where I will guide you on your reinvention journey. So it's the first time I'll be offering something like that. And I've already heard from so many people just writing emails about some of these thoughts and what I've experienced of how helpful it's been, because there is so much change. And so I've gone through this, and I'm going through, because reinvention is a process, but I realized I've kind of initiated or embraced this kind of next cycle of reinvention. And I wanted to share with you some of the lessons that I have learned. And I was reflecting on them for a while, and I kind of finally made a list of 5, because there's more. But I wanted to share these 5 lessons with you. And again, if you have questions or thoughts or things you want to share, please feel free to put them in chat or in the Q&A. And I'll absolutely answer them, of course. So 5 lessons I've learned about reinvention. The first is your mindset shapes your experience. So you can either have a mindset of resistance, of why is this happening? Right? Like I've talked to so many people. I've had these reinvention conversations with so many people, and some people have lost their job they've had for a long time, or they all of a sudden feel really unsatisfied in their job, or their industry is changing. Or I've talked to a lot of people who are, in this transition point where their kids are off to college, and, they're not quite sure what to do next. And they're like in this frustration place. And so you can either have a mindset of being really frustrated and annoyed and resisting the change. And then if you have that mindset, it's going to be really frustrating for you. And it's really stressful. And the brain will use that opportunity to just have more and more fear thoughts. Or you can choose a mindset, which is embracing change as an opportunity to grow and evolve into the future self you want to be. And that is a giant difference. And I invite you to really think about whatever change you're experiencing in your life, which mindset are you bringing to it? Because when you bring a mindset of, how is this inviting me to grow? How is this inviting me to evolve? Just asking those questions without immediately having the answer, because the answers are not like this. This isn't like super simple. They need time to evolve, but just asking those questions, having that mindset of possibility is a huge difference, because you're more open. You're not in resistance. You're in full engaged acceptance. You start to see opportunities. You start to see possibilities. The mindset you have, the story you tell yourself about change determines your experience. So if you tell yourself the story that this is frustrating and annoying, and why is this happening to me? It's very narrowing. It's very restrictive. If you tell yourself the story that, yeah, this is difficult, this might be challenging, but how is this inviting me to grow? This might be an opportunity to really evolve to a better place. Your brain is open. It's an expansive story. It literally helps you see more possibilities, more opportunities of how you could shift. And so that's the first huge lesson. So when I was first stuck in the goo, I was very much in the, oh my God, what is happening? Is this not good enough? And I think some of that is just natural, but don't get stuck in it for too long, because it wasn't until I asked myself, how is this inviting me to grow and evolve, that I realized, wow, all this work that I've done one-on-one in my one-on-one mentorship that I do with just people in my life or with myself, or I've talked about change quite a lot and thriving through change. All this work, I want to add more to it. I want to bring it to people in a really new way. It wasn't until I started asking myself those questions that I came up with that. So that's a first huge lesson. Your mindset determines your experience with change. The second lesson is you don't need to know exactly where you're headed to begin your journey of reinvention. You don't need to know the final outcome. You have to have a vision of how you want to feel internally. Like, I wanted to feel excited again. I wanted to feel invigorated. I wanted to feel in service, but I didn't know exactly how things would land. I still am not sure. I'm creating all these new things. I don't know how they will land in the market with all of you. But so you don't have to know the final destination. You have to have a vision of how you want your inner experience to be. That's really important. But you don't have to know exactly where you're headed. You make the path by taking steps. And so that's a really huge thing. Often I talk to people that I mentor, and they tell me, Nataly, like, I'm feeling unsatisfied at my work, or, I'm not quite sure what to do next. And that's okay. But you have to envision the possibility. You have to begin by thinking about, how do I want to feel? How do I want my inner experience to be? And that becomes your guidance. So that's a really, really important lesson. You don't have to know the final place you're going or your destination, but you do have to envision how you want to feel. And that becomes your guiding light. The third lesson is the way to begin any process of reinvention is to connect to your sense of purpose and what feels deeply good to you, because those are also insights into your unique gift. So I have a question in the Q&A of, well, what if you don't know your unique gifts? A lot of people say that to me. And that's why we're going to do this program in the fall to help you get clarity on that. You know, we are fantastic at seeing gifts in others, but not in ourselves, right? The brain's negativity bias loves to think about all the things we're not good at, loves to tell us we're not good at anything. So it takes some self-discovery. So reinvention has to begin with a place of self-discovery, right? We often think to change, to reinvent, like, oh, what's a different job that I can have? What's a different role I want to get? What's a different place I want to move to? Those are external things. You will come to them later. You have to begin internally. You have to begin with self-discovery and asking yourself these questions of what feels deeply good to me when I do it. Because by the way, guess what? The things that feel deeply good to you when you do them are your unique gifts. The things that feel deeply good to you when you do them, those things that feel almost effortless, that you don't even think are unique gifts, they are your unique gifts because they're so natural to you that you don't even realize they're your gifts. So begin with self-discovery, asking yourself, what feels deeply good to me? What is something that when I do it, I feel so good, like I could do it forever without feeling drained, like it's almost effortless. Look back at your life, at your career, and look for what were those moments where you felt most alive, most invigorated, where you felt like, yes, like I just want to do this. Those are insights into your unique gifts. And those are insights into what is most meaningful to you, because that will start to offer you clues about your way forward through your reinvention. Because the purpose of a reinvention is to share more of your unique gifts in ways that feel deeply aligned with your authentic self and deeply meaningful. That is, I believe, the purpose of life. That is why we're here, to figure out what are those unique gifts and how can we share them in ways that feel really true with a capital T, and purposeful. And so you have to begin by asking yourself those inner discovery questions. And this takes some time, this takes some marination, but that is the place to begin. So that was a huge lesson I've learned, that before you can think of like, oh, this job or this business, or I move in this direction, you have to look within first. And it takes time. The self-discovery takes time. It takes courage to get honest with yourself. And this kind of brings me to lesson number 4, is having a mentor to guide you on your reinvention is incredibly powerful. I began to work with a new business mentor last year, and it has been absolutely like life-changing, because a mentor holds up a mirror. That is the best thing that a mentor can do, is they hold up a mirror, both to help you illuminate your unique gifts and what's meaningful to you, to help you step out of that negative judgment of yourself of like, nothing about me is special. A mentor is also fantastic at helping you see those limiting stories, the limiting narratives you believe about yourself, like, oh, I can never do this, I've always been this way. So it's been really life-changing for me to be working with my mentor. And I've realized that without that relationship, I am not sure that I would be here today talking to you about this. I'm not sure. Actually, let me say this differently. I probably would have gotten to this place of wanting to talk about reinvention and helping people really thrive through change and evolve into this thriving future self, because it builds on so much of the work I've already done. But I think it would have taken me a lot longer. And that's one of the biggest gifts of working with a mentor, is who has experience in doing what you want to do. And who can guide you. It just makes it much faster. It shrinks the process, and you get to do the process, because it's important that you go through the process, but it just shrinks the process. And that's why I offer mentorship. That's why I'm going to be offering this program in the fall. That's why I'm offering this mastermind and small group mentorship program for reinvention in the winter. That if you are in this place in your life where you are ready to roll up your sleeves and go on this inner reinvention to evolve into a more thriving future you, that I will be your mentor. And that's the reason, like that's the power. And finally, like the fifth lesson I want to share is that it's a really beautiful and difficult process. It is something we do all the time. If you look back at your life, you've reinvented many times. You evolved many times. You know, as human beings, we overestimate how we might change in a year. We underestimate how we might change in 10. We change a lot. Not to mention like the cells in your body change all the time, right? But we as human beings, we evolve all the time. And so we're constantly reinventing, but it's a really beautiful process when you approach it intentionally, when you really begin with a vision of how you want your inner experience to be, when you go through that process of self-discovery, when you embrace change and evolution and reinvention with this mindset of possibility and purpose, when you see it as an opportunity to share more of your unique gifts in ways that feel really aligned for you, it becomes a really beautiful process, and it's a really challenging process, because we have to step into the unknown. Like any change, right? A lot of people tell me they're bad at change. I did a reel on Instagram and I posted this on LinkedIn today. A lot of people tell me they're bad at change. You're not bad at change. No one is bad at change. You're brilliant at change, because to be human is to change all the time. When people say I'm bad at change, what they really mean is I am uncomfortable with it. I don't like change. And of course not, because the brain just wants to keep you safe, and the familiar is safe. And change means uncertainty, means unknown, means loss of control. And so the brain feels fear and starts to put the brakes on with the stress and the worrying. And what if this doesn't work out? And what if I can't do this? And that's challenging. That is challenging. Reinvention is challenging. It is both beautiful and challenging. And that was a huge lesson for me. But one of the reasons I'm so excited to be bringing more of this work with you, and by the way, so many of the skills and so many of the things I've shared with you in these podcasts, in my books, they are your allies for reinvention, right? Self-compassion, knowing how to support yourself instead of cause struggle to yourself, practicing acceptance, so learning to look at things as they are, not as how your brain thinks they should be, having a sense of purpose, connecting to your bigger why, having a lot of emotional awareness and emotional openness. Vulnerability is really powerful, important component of reinvention, because as you emerge into something new, you're going to have to be vulnerable. You're going to be doing some things you are not good at or not familiar to you. You're going to need to ask questions and ask for help. So a lot of the skills that I have shared with you in my other work and before, they are essential to helping you go through this really beautiful but challenging process of reinvention. And I just want to encourage you, if you are at a pivot point in your life, if you are going through a transition in your work, in your career, personally, that you take these lessons to heart, and that you recognize that it is who you are. It is your innate ability to change and evolve and reinvent, but your mindset, your approach, really determines whether it's more challenging or more beautiful. So that's what I wanted to share with you. And I hope these lessons resonate with you and they land with you and you apply them in ways that are meaningful to you. And again, I'll be diving much more into everything I've said on the Reinventability podcast, in the Reinventability Fall program, in my mentorship, and in many other ways. And so I am eager to hear from you, either in chat or let me know in an email. Like, are you at a transition point in your life? Are you at a pivot point in your life? Are you going through change? What are your challenges? How is this resonating with you? What would you like to learn more and get more help in? Because you know that again, this work is in service of my community, of all the awesome humans that I can help. And so the more that you tell me about your questions around change and reinvention, where you're stuck, where you're struggling, the more that I can be in service of you. So let me know. You all have my email. You can reply to the weekly email that you get from me. And that way, my work will continue to fuel you, because that's my joy. My joy is to know that what I'm doing is fueling you. So that's what I wanted to share with you. I've answered a few questions that I've gotten as I was talking. If you have other questions, if you are here live, or thoughts, or things that resonate with you, or what this illuminates for you, or where you might be stuck, I'd love to actually hear, just because we have a few minutes, but I'd love to hear, if you're here live, are you in a moment of transition, or pivot in your career or your life, you can raise your hand or you can let me know in chat. I know a lot of people are. I've been writing about this, and so I've heard from a lot of my community. But I'd love to hear if you are. And again, I really encourage you, because a lot of you are, to really become really aware of what is the story you're telling yourself about change. Is it a really negative story? Is it resistance? Is it narrowing you? Is it restricting you? Is it causing you fear? And can you tell yourself a more expansive story? Can you tell yourself a story of possibility and purpose? And I'll just close with this. I was thinking about hosting this episode and telling all of you and telling my community that this is going to be our last Awesome Human podcast, and I'm launching this new thing. And I had all kinds of emotions, right? There's sadness because in a way it's like an end of a journey, even though I'm beginning the next one right away. And I was like, oh, are people going to be disappointed? All kinds of things. And then I just had to ground myself in that same perspective and tell myself a different story, that my purpose in life is to stay true, to be true to who I am. And I feel really pulled in this direction of sharing more to help you reinvent into this future thriving self and to build on the work that I've already done. And if I lie to that, if I cheat on that by not doing that, well, then how am I in service of anyone? How can I be on any keynote stage? How can I mentor anyone? And so I told myself a different story, and I told myself that this is a natural evolution. As an author, a teacher, a speaker, my work evolves as I evolve. And I told myself the story of possibility of how many more people I could help who are struggling with change or reinvention by doing this. And so I just share this with you because it's a practice, just like everything else we talk about. It is a practice. It isn't something you just do once. And so I just wanted to give you my example, even with this episode. And so, yeah, thank you. I just want to tell you, there's a couple more questions I'm going to answer. I just want to tell you, I am really, I'm like, my heart is really full from all of the support and the excitement for the new journey. And from this community, you are a giant part of my bigger why. You are all why I do what I do. And it means a tremendous amount to me. That we're celebrating this together and that you're excited to come on this journey with me. So I just want to tell you how much that means to me. Deborah's asking to revisit number 2, the lesson number 2, right? So you don't have to know exactly where you're going when you begin your reinvention journey. You don't have to know exactly I did not know that I would get to a place of creating a new reinventability framework 2 years ago. I did not know that. I did not know that I would create a podcast. I did not know that I would start new speaking around it. I just knew I wanted. So you don't have to know, but you have to have a vision for how you want to feel. And I was starting to feel stagnant. I didn't want to feel stagnant. I wanted to feel invigorated. I wanted to feel like I am excited by every word that I'm saying. And so I had a vision for the future self I wanted to evolve into. I wanted to be invigorated. I wanted to be sharing my full truth. I wanted to be sharing more of my gifts, and reinvention is a gift of mine. I'm a black belt reinventor, and I wanted to bring more of that dimension to you. One of the questions that I often get when I do a keynote, I often get this question because I share the breakdown and burnout that I went through about 8 or 9 years ago, and and the skills that helped me get here. And the question that I often get is, well, how did you get here exactly? What did you do? And I realized that I haven't answered that question well. And that's why I created this framework, because it's also a really powerful framework if you are feeling burnt out, to reinvent to a place where you aren't. And so this was also my way. I wanted to be more in service, and I wanted to really respond to to how I could help, right? And in the same way, I just want to be really specific about this. Speaking is a business, right? I love it, but it is a business. And during the pandemic and after, there was a lot of demand for talks about well-being and burnout, and I could be of service because that's what I was focused on. And now there's a lot of companies want to hear about thriving through change because people are stressed out, of course, by all the change that's going on. And so by creating this new framework and doing this new work and creating this new keynote, I can be of more service to more people. And that also helps my business grow. And so I didn't know exactly where I'd be. I still don't know, but I have my guiding light is wanting to feel a certain way, wanting my business to be a certain way, and like overall just wanting to be truly like aligned with my authentic self and feeling like I am on purpose. And so you don't have to know exactly where you're going to end up. And I'm going to tell you, you probably can't. You can't. But you do want to start in a place where you really connect with how you want to feel. How do you want your future self to feel? How do you want your business to feel? How do you want your career, your job to feel? And that becomes your guiding light. I just want to read a few comments just because I think we can share in them together. But, someone just said, you helped me survive the pandemic. I treasure and appreciate the wisdom you share. That means the world to me. Thank you. I love someone saying, I look forward to these so much. Yes, they're going to keep coming. I will still be in your ear, and we're also going to be posting videos on YouTube, and I will be doing some of these live. Someone is saying, I love your podcast. You've been a tremendous mentor by sharing your story. Thank you. Again, this means the world to me. Thank you for leading by example and protecting your energy and time. Keep evolving, your stage will follow. Well, I think I'm just going to print that out, Laura, and put it right here. And again, it means the world for me to have this community of people that I get to connect with and help and be in service of. But again, I share this because I want to encourage you to recognize that you are all in service of other people. You all have gifts. And remember, your gifts can be your how. In fact, a lot of your gifts are your how. The how of you, not just the what of you, but the how you are, how you show up, how your being is. That is a gift that we love to ignore. I was in the elevator the other day, and you know me, I love to wear bright things, and I was wearing something bright and kind of fun. And there was this woman in the elevator, and she looked at me, she said, looking at you just makes me happy. And I've had a really, really crappy day. And you know what? I'm just going to go out and buy myself something bright because I just saw you. I didn't say a word, right? I wasn't teaching anything. And teaching is a skill. It is a gift, but I wasn't doing that. It was just my how, my being, and being honest to who I am helped this woman. So your being and being honest to who you are, your how is a gift. Please don't dismiss that. And so I hope the big thing you take away from this is the most important part of your reinvention, of your aliveness, of life, is to stay really true to who you are, to what feels deeply good to you, because deeply good is an indication of this is true to who you are. When something feels deeply good, it means you're really aligned with your gifts. So that is the place to begin, is connect to what feels deeply good to you, and then keep looking for ways to express that in ways that feels really aligned and in service of others. And I really am grateful for all of you for this 100-episode journey, and I'm very excited. And I hope you will all be joining me for our new next chapter. It's not a new journey. We're on this journey. It'll be our next chapter of our journey together on the Reinventability podcast. And hopefully many of you will join me for the Reinventability program. If you want to get on the early wait list, because it'll probably fill up, you can send me an email and let me know you're interested. If you want to explore a deeper one-on-one mentorship or being part of my small group mastermind on Reinvention next year, please reach out and let me know. I'm interviewing people now. But more than anything, it is the greatest gift of my life to be sharing my gifts in service of all of you. And I couldn't do it without all of you. So thank you. I'm going to cherish all these comments from today. Cynthia just wrote, I found you during the pandemic. It was a bad time for me as I was taking care of my 102-year-old mom. Amazing. In her last months, your podcasts were moments of help and a lifeline. You're an amazing human, Cynthia, and I thank you for expressing that. It's It helped me survive the pandemic. To be in service of all of you, it helped me survive the pandemic and beyond. And so thank you for this journey, for these 100 episodes. And again, I am so excited for you to join me on our next journey, next chapter together, the reinventability journey. Cannot wait. Please look out for my email so that you know when the first podcast downloads so you can listen or watch. And I'll definitely be doing some as a live recording as well. So thank you all. Thank you for being awesome humans. Please, please, please always remember your how is a gift. You have so many gifts. And it is never bragging. It is never selfish to embrace them and to share them. In fact, I will leave you with this thought. It is your responsibility in this lifetime to uncover and share your unique gifts with others. That is why you are here. Thank you so much for being awesome humans. I will see you on the Reinventability podcast, our next chapter together. Thank you all so much.